Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. Northwestern was one of the most disappointing teams in the country last year. The Wildcats won the Big Ten West in 2018 and look poised to contend again in 2019 with plenty of returning starters and landing transfer quarterback Hunter Johnson from Clemson. But the end result was a 3-9 season, the worst under Pat Fitzgerald during his 14 years with the program. It was a very unexpected turn in Evanston, but it may have been the wake-up call that the Wildcats needed. And as we look ahead into 2020, this could be the year that the Wildcats bounce back and get back to the postseason. We take a look at their offense, which was a major reason for their struggles in 2019. They returned 7 starters from one of the worst in the entire country. The Wildcats were 126th in the nation in scoring at 16.3 points per game. They were 128th in passing touchdowns with just 6 touchdowns through the air spread over 3 different quarterbacks. And they were last in yards per pass attempt at just 4.5 yards per attempt. There was so much uncertainty at quarterback last year for Northwestern, they could hardly move the ball. And yes, we know they battled injuries, but still, being in the Big Ten and averaging less than 17 points per game, you would expect a season like they had in 2019. But yet again, in 2020, they are hoping that a transfer quarterback can change all of that as they land Peyton Ramsey, the transfer from Indiana, who had tons of playing time and experience with the Hoosiers, throwing for over 5,300 yards over the past 2 seasons. They returned 2 great running backs, Drake Anderson, who rushed for 634 yards last year, and Isaiah Bowser, who is going to be returning from an injury that he suffered last year as well. This Northwestern offense should take a major step forward in 2020. Defensively, despite going 3-9, they ranked 25th in the country in total defense. So that was really, really impressive. 3-9, but they still had a top 25 defense in the country. And they could be even better this year. 9 returning starters, mostly led by seniors. That includes linebacker Blake Gallagher, who was the leading tackler last year. That includes linebacker Patty Fisher. And that includes Greg Newsome in the secondary as well. If there's one thing that is consistent with Northwestern is that they always have a good defense under Pat Fitzgerald. And that's been evident for about the past 5 years or so because since 2015, Northwestern is 18th in defensive efficiency. They rank 18th in the country in defensive efficiency since 2015. So this Northwestern squad has the chance to get back to the postseason. We're going to take a look at their schedule now, which kicks off against Michigan State, jumping right into Big Ten Conference play. And this is an intriguing matchup here because you look at this Michigan State team, so much uncertainty surrounding this program. Landing Mel Tucker, coming over from Colorado in February, having to deal with a brand new quarterback themselves, and like Northwestern, usually boasts a fairly good defense. The Spartans took care of Northwestern 31-10 last year, and the million-dollar question here is going to be, first off, how well does Northwestern move the ball with Peyton Ramsey now at the helm, but also how well can Northwestern break through the Spartans' offensive line, which is going to be one of their strengths offensively this year. I don't think either works out too well for the Wildcats in Week 1. While Michigan State may have a down year, I think they kick off the Mel Tucker era with a win, and Northwestern kicks off 2020 at 0-1 in a hard-fought battle in East Lansing. I do think they bounce back, however, with wins against Tulane and wins against Central Michigan. We did not put automatic W's there because those are 2 teams out of the American Athletic Conference and the MAC that could give Northwestern a little bit of trouble, that could put up a fight against them. Both have relatively good offenses, which will test this defense. But I think the Wildcats, they take care of business and they're 2-1. They then go on the road to take on Penn State. That's not the type of matchup you want to see to end September. Penn State's going to be one of the best teams in the country this year and has a very good chance to win the Big Ten East if they, of course, can get past Ohio State. But with it being in Happy Valley and with Penn State having so many offensive weapons, Sean Clifford, Journey Brown, Noah Cain, Pat Fryermuth, and then their defense having 5 returning starters as well, I don't see many teams going into Happy Valley and snagging a win. And unfortunately, Northwestern will not be one of those teams. They lose on the road to the Nittany Lions. They then return home to take on Nebraska, and these two teams met for a defensive slugfest in 2019 as Northwestern lost that game 13-10. And that was on the road. That was at Nebraska. That was in Lincoln. And this Nebraska team is one that I do think improves in 2020. I think Scott Frost needs a huge, big year 3. He has to step forward in year 3. He's gone from 4-8 to 5-7. Can they get to 6-6 or maybe even 7-5 in 2020? I think that's extremely possible if Adrian Martinez stays healthy. Martinez has to stay healthy across the board, and I'm thinking that he will have a great start to his 2020 campaign after a 2019 letdown, but the defense for Northwestern will be too much. They get the win over the Cornhuskers here. Home field advantage. Coming off a loss at Penn State, Nebraska having a relatively difficult schedule as well to kick off their season. Northwestern's 3-2. They've already matched last year's win total before their bye week on October 10th. They come out of the bye week to take on Maryland, and like many of the other teams, you look at Maryland, a major disappointment last year considering the way they started. They had one of the best offenses in the country last year for the first 2 weeks of the season. It was unbelievable how well that offense was gelling in Mike Locksley's system. But then everything fell apart, and they ended 2019 on a 7-game losing streak. Josh Jackson has to stay healthy for Maryland to succeed this year. If they want to be competitive, they have to play through Josh Jackson, and their defense has to step up. While I think Jackson takes a step forward, I don't think their defense takes that much of a leap to shut down what should be a much improved Northwestern offense coming off a week of rest at home. All signs point to a victory for me, and Northwestern has now exceeded last year's win total. They're 4-2 going into a very difficult stretch here of at Iowa, at Purdue, and Wisconsin. A very dangerous 3-game stretch here, especially that Iowa and Wisconsin game, 2 of the better teams within the Big Ten West. You start here with the game against the Hawkeyes. Last year, the Wildcats were shut out at home 20-0 against Kirk Ferentz' squad. Now they have to travel to Kinnick Stadium, one of the most difficult places to play in the country. Kind of like Happy Valley, not many teams can go into Kinnick Stadium and come away with the win, especially if this game were to be at night. So I look at this game, an Iowa team that is experienced on defense yet again, but actually might be pretty dang good on offense as well. This will be relatively low scoring. Last year, just 20 total points scored. Northwestern will put up some points finally, but Iowa will escape with a win at home. And after a 2-game winning streak and winning 4 of their last 5 games, Northwestern finally takes a loss. They then travel on the road to Purdue. This is another team that, if they can stay healthy, will have a major bounce-back year within the Big Ten West. Northwestern lost to the Boilermakers 24-22 last year, and keep in mind that was against a beat-up Purdue team. So they lost by 2 points at home to a bad Purdue team that was without Rondale Moore, that was without their star quarterback in Elijah Sindelar, but now gets Jack Plummer in as quarterback, who had plenty of experience last year in replacement for Sindelar, and then should have Rondale Moore and David Bell back as well. This is an improving Purdue team, one that, like Northwestern, could bounce back and get back to the postseason. And I like the Boilermakers to get the job done at home. If Purdue can come in as beat up as they were last year and beat Northwestern on the road, they can certainly beat Northwestern when the Boilermakers are full strength at their house. So they take a loss here, and I believe they take a loss against Wisconsin in Chicago. Not in Evanston, but in Chicago. So it should be a fun matchup there. And last year, despite how good Wisconsin was, Northwestern only lost 24-15 in Madison. And they only lost by 9, and really Wisconsin's defense bailed them out of that game. Northwestern's offense was so bad, the Badgers were able to force some turnovers. They were able to set them up for short fields. They were able to get a defensive touchdown. All of that being said, if they don't get those, it's a much closer game in Madison than 9 points. And even that was relatively surprising. So expect maybe another relatively low-scoring game here, as each of these teams should have a great defense. But in the end, the Badgers are just going to be too physical up front, like they always are. And Jack Cohn is a guy you cannot sleep on. He's going to be a very, very good quarterback this year in the Big Ten. And he's certainly not getting enough credit. We have them snapping a 3-game losing streak with a win against Morgan State. That's one of our automatic wins there, which means Northwestern is now sitting with 5 wins. They've got 5 wins on the table here, which means they're just one away from returning to the postseason under Pat Fitzgerald. Unfortunately, they will not clinch bowl eligibility on the road against Minnesota. Kind of like that Wisconsin game, I think Northwestern surprised a few people by hanging with the Golden Gophers longer than expected, only losing 38-22 at home. So a 16-point, 2-possession loss at home to a very good Minnesota team. But once again, Minnesota has a chance to be even better in 2020 than they were in 2019. Tanner Morgan's back, the wide receivers are back, Muhammad Ibrahim's back, and the defense, once again, will be a top 25 unit. On the road against a legitimate Big Ten title contender, don't see them winning this game. Which means that if Northwestern wants to go bowling, they have to win at home against Illinois. Last year against the Fighting Illini, Northwestern surprised everybody because Illinois was sitting at 6-5, finally clinched bowl eligibility under Lovie Smith. They were on the road at Illinois, and Northwestern defeated them 29-10. 29-10. That's an Illinois team that did go on the road and beat Michigan State, that did defeat Wisconsin at home. So it caught a lot of people by surprise here, considering how bad Northwestern's offense was and how bad they struggled over the course of the season. And I think if they can do that in 2019, they can certainly do it with a better team in 2020 and the game being at their house and bowl eligibility being on the line. Too much to play for. Too much has been changed, and I do think Northwestern gets the win here over an Illinois team that has plenty of returning experience, that might be out for revenge in 2020 after that just annihilation they suffered last year, but I don't think it's going to have enough considering their schedule. So Northwestern clinches bowl eligibility in the final week of the season and finishes 2020 at 6-6. And to me, that is a major successful season for Pat Fitzgerald. You go 3-9 in 2019. You land Peyton Ramsey, and that's the key, guys. That's the key here. Quarterback play is going to determine whether or not Northwestern gets to go bowling or not, because they don't have much depth across the board. Yes, plenty of their quarterbacks had playing experience last year, but none of them on the roster is going to be as good as Peyton Ramsey. So if he doesn't pan out, kind of like Hunter Johnson didn't pan out, or if he goes down with an injury, Northwestern could be in for a very long season. But the Wildcats usually average about 7.1 wins per year under Pat Fitzgerald. This puts them right on track to get on that average. Peyton Ramsey is going to be the key, but I think Wildcats finally bounce back and get to the postseason. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and check out everything we have for you down in the description below. We've got some exclusive college football news, content, and offers that you do not want to miss, so make sure to check it all out. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.